Bonjour, friends! World's Fair Girl 99 here. Quick disclaimer, on today's episode we're going to be talking about the Confederacy, not condoning it. So if you're here for that, this ain't the place for you. Now, let's get started, shall we? 2 months after the birth of the Confederacy, they began issuing their own currency. They came in 50-cent, $1, $2, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, $500, and $1,000 denominations. They also had 1 and 50-cent coins. Now, bills depicted anything from slaves, gods and goddesses, George Washington, Andrew Jackson. Actually, he was a bit of an interesting choice to include on these bills because back in the day, long before the Civil War, when Jackson was president, South Carolina did threaten to secede. You know what happened? He essentially threatened to turn the state into a parking lot, paraphrased obviously, with the military. So yeah, interesting putting him on your currency. Other bills depicted John C. Calhoun, a former vice president of the U.S. who joined the Confederacy, the Confederate president himself, Jefferson Davis, the vice president of the Confederate States, Alexander H. Stephens, the quote-unquote queen of the Confederacy, Lucy Pickens, amongst other Confederate government figures. Oftentimes, the images on the bills were of poor quality because most of the bill engravers at the time kinda lived in the Union. Fun fact for you, the North themselves printed counterfeit Confederate money and circulated it in an attempt to devalue it. There was one really famous counterfeiter named Samuel Upham who printed, I want to say, like $15 million worth of counterfeit Confederate dollars. These bills became heavily circulated in the Confederacy. He got into some hot water in the Union for his actions. Essentially, the Union feared the Confederacy would respond to this by doing the same thing to them, though nothing ever came of said hot water. They really couldn't do anything about it because in their own eyes, the Confederacy didn't even legally exist as a country. You can't counterfeit money for a country that doesn't exist. The official name for the currency was the Confederate States dollar. However, they were nicknamed graybacks, in contrast to the US dollar's nickname of greenbacks. The name had nothing to do with the image on the bills themselves, rather the gray uniforms the Confederate soldiers wore during the Civil War. Unlike its adversary's currency, it wasn't backed by gold or anything. It was backed by a promise of its value after the war ended, hence the 2 years after the ratification of a treaty between the Confederate States and the United States on the bill pictured. In other words, the bills only carried backing should the Confederacy have won the war. As the war progressed and the likelihood of CSA independence dwindled, the currency significantly dropped in its value. Here's a fun little tidbit for you. When the news of the Confederacy's defeat at the Battle of Gettysburg hit the Confederate public, the worth of the Confederate States dollar dropped by 20%. By the end of 1864, one Confederate dollar equaled about 3 cents of one US dollar. Once the war ended, that value dropped to nothing, legally speaking. Nowadays, however, Confederate bills are huge, oftentimes expensive collector's items. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to subscribe for more World's Fair Girl 99. Until next time, au revoir.